Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with The Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural law so that we might, restore our American Republic. Please follow us on Facebook, this Facebook page, and check out us on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -ROAR. So if you'd like to take part in the narrative, simply post your comments and we'll be happy to address them when relevant to our discussion. And you can help us be a voice here locally by liking and sharing our program. Please note also that we're going to be expanding our live stream to other venues very, very soon. As noted in our previous show, the first of 5 positive effects of the biblical worldview in government was the anchoring of natural law that brought a balance between liberty and governmental stability. The second of these positive effects was the free enterprise system. When economics and enterprise are based on a realistic, that would be a biblical worldview of human nature, people are given an incentive to produce. A lack of incentive causes the workforce to feel used and abused, and it's also the method of unfair wealth production. What would prevent the abuse of work incentives? Well, a genuine awareness of a transcendent God. A third positive effect, this comes from the biblical teachings of the priesthood of all believers. What? Well, this concept was a grand purpose, and our founding fathers saw that they needed to prepare for this very, very wise and understanding of where God was calling his people. The biblical concept produced widespread literacy. It also implied equality of all and had a practical experience in church government. So the people themselves involved in church government prepared themselves to be involved in our political system. So if any, again, are interested in the course that I teach, The American View of the Constitution, let me know in the comments or private message to me, because I do hope to start something in late August if there's enough interest. With that, I'd like to again bring back our special guest, Tod Howard. How you doing, Tod?
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
Sure. You know, I was talking about this earlier, that my wife and I struggle to make downtown Clermont a regular weekend destination. And we've kind of talked about that. You've talked about the convenience of parking, et cetera, et cetera. I'm really excited about that. But as we finished our last meeting, we were kind of getting into the school board, and I kind of squashed that because I knew our time was getting short. I understand you had a good bit of involvement in a very, very positive turn of events for the school board system.
Yeah, so at that time, when I got elected to school board, it was sort of at the end of the Great Recession, and we were facing an $80 million budget shortfall, and we were $500 million in debt, and it was just a really, really rough time. And so we had to eat our peas, and that's how I got unelected, was because I said, hey, we have to eat our peas. And everybody wants to be a conservative until it's time to do conservative stuff. And so we did, and we found a way to get on a pay-as-you-go plan with the help of Bill Mathias and others. And so we got on a pay-as-you-go plan, and as of 2031 or 32, Lake County School District will be out of debt. And that's a wonderful place to be when you are $500 million in debt. Just 15 years ago, they were spending over $30 million just in debt service every year. That's enough. At that time, it was enough to build an elementary school. Wow. So it worked out well. We're really happy for the school district. They do a lot of good things. They've got a great education program, especially down in here, down in South Lake. Most of our schools are A's and B's, and so I'm really pleased with the direction that Lake County Schools has gone.
Super. Let's welcome again our good friend Mike Levine. How you doing, Mr. Levine, this morning?
Great. Thanks, Chuck. It's interesting. We had Andy Dubois on a couple of days ago, and Andy felt the same exact way that Tod felt. He thinks that the there's quite a transition there prior to the hiring of Diane Cornegay, our Lake County School System Superintendent. And I asked Andy, how he, to kind of help us understand the transition. And I'm not sure we want to get into the history of it, but Andy agrees, I think, with Todd that Diane's done a pretty good job for us. Is that right, Todd?
Absolutely. We got rid of, so back then I called them fiefdoms. If you weren't in the clique and, in with the right people and said and did the right things, then you weren't going to move up and your ideas were not valued. And so when Miss Cornegay came in and didn't have those old alliances, she was able to shake things up and move some of those people out who were not doing what was in the best interest of the district. And so that was very positive. And so they've done a great job. I don't fault them for a lot of things. We've got some issues on growth that we have to deal with, but that's minor stuff.
I would just like to say that we haven't fully abolished the class system here in Lake County yet. Diane Cornegay is probably a very good step in the right direction, but it ain't over, brother. Chuck?
Yeah, I thought you were going to take off on me, Mike, so I put you up there on the stage. So,
well, don't get me started.
Well, I know. I guess we did get you started there. We kind of closed our last session with you kind of getting ready to take off on me, So I thought I'd give you a full half hour to. Yeah, so, well, school board, there are other things that we have to talk about, I guess. Another issue that kind of came up a little while back was the Clermont Performing Arts Center. What's happening with that, and what are your feelings of how well it's doing or what it should be doing in the future? Take off with it, Todd.
So the Performing Arts Centers is really a difficult one. From an idea standpoint, hey, we're gonna bring some arts to the community, which is a great idea, right up until we realize how much this thing just drains. It's upside down by $1.5 million just in salaries every year. And so when I came in, if somebody handed me that building and said, go make this profitable, you could do it. Just about anybody could do that, except for government. And so, they just don't look at it from a business perspective of saying, hey, we want to have some high quality shows. I'm all for high quality shows, but we also have to make sure that they're going to pay for themselves. So that comes to how are you advertising, all of those pieces and parts, your social media, your web presence, and we just don't do a good job of that. And so I get that we've got this beautiful building, but at the end of the day, we're just not doing a good job of getting revenue from that building, and we should be able to do it. And I think it's a challenge, but we have to talk about it, and people don't like to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I've had a very modest intro into the performing arts arena, and performing arts they don't make money. In the Atlanta area, I was familiar with a lot of that, and it was a constant drain. Maybe in New York City, I'm sure in New York City, Chicago, places like that, the performing arts can ring it up. Of course, they can also charge you $120 a ticket, which isn't exactly the price range that we here in Clermont would necessarily jump at. So I can understand why it would be a difficult issue. Is there any solutions? Is there somebody willing to buy that and make it something else, or where is that going, if anywhere?
So what I think that in the consensus of council is we want to have the arts there. We just need it to be less of a drain. And I think we can get there. So, like you said, there's always going to be some level of a drain, but we can moderate that. And at the end, we've got a great piece of property next door, not ours, private. And if we can work with them and create some economic development, again, everything's economic development. And so if we can have people who are going to feed in and show up at these shows and go eat and, spend money in Clermont, then it becomes more valuable as a destination. And, you can look at it kind of as a loss leader, but we're going to bring in the other money into that area. So, I think it's just working with the community and figuring out how to use it as an economic development tool.
Mike, I know you had some questions or comments on the Performing Arts Center.
This is a huge deal to me. And again, I don't live in the city either. So, a lot of times if you don't live there, you just stay out of it. This is just, it's emblematic of the problem of government. So Todd, think back to when that building was acquired. Think back to who owned it and sold it to the city and what was going on then. You want to talk about that, Todd?
Well, we bought it. It was a church that was having some issues. We paid too much for it. And this is where the problem goes, is that those decisions were made earlier, and to take things away from people once they have it becomes very, very difficult. And so, what you're alluding to is just they should have thought it out better before they did it, but they didn't. And so now we have this thing and people expect that thing. And so now we have to figure out how to make it work. But you'll find that in a lot of issues. We were looking at some property to purchase, and they're like, oh, well, we could put this on it, and I'm like, okay, but that's $1 million piece of property, and what happens when we want to redevelop it? We're not going to be able to take that little park that you put on there away. They're not going to, residents won't stand for that. And so sometimes you have to think out and about what's going to happen with it. When that was purchased, they had it under a private management group. And then we brought it back under our management. And, when I was elected, I said, look, either manage it properly, put it under private management as a private-public partnership, or shut it down. Pick your one. But at some point, we've got to get to where this is not just this massive drain on our budgets.
Todd, I'm thinking that the number of citizens of the city of Clermont who actually have any contact or interaction with the Performing Arts Center is a very small percentage of the population. Am I right or wrong?
Well, because everybody votes there. I mean, there's some successful shows.
Yeah, but that's
the pickleball courts are there. The water, our pool's there. So there's more than you would think that are there. I rode over there the other day, and the parking lot was about a quarter full on a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day I rode by. So, people use it, but absolutely it's not being used at the level we'd like to see it. And that's where I run into the problem, is that if it's something that the community really wants, is going to support, and the people who use it are going to drive revenue through there, then I get it. But, we've got to find a way to make it better. And I think we can do that. I just don't know what that answer is yet.
Yeah,
so it's also true that it's also true that the people making the decisions do not have the business experience required to make the best decision. A seasoned business professional who operates at that scope would not have made the decision to buy the building, correct?
100%. Yeah, no. And that's why I say that we've got to get to where they're running it like a business. I'm sure in real estate, you're doing retargeting. Somebody comes onto your website, you figure out how you're going to stay in touch with that person. And these are all things we're not doing at that level. And if we're not running it, if we're not running the business of the Performing Arts Center as a business, well, then that's a failure on us. And we've got to get to where we're doing that.
Yeah, one final comment on the performing art thing is that it should be being used to bring people into our community who are not in our community. And I would imagine it could be done, except that you can't get to Clermont from the east. And I'm not sure who's coming from the west? I mean, from west of me, there's just nothing but green. I guess the green swamp is out over there. I guess if you get a little farther
Chuck,
north,
I have to weigh in on this, Jeff. I mean, I must weigh in on this.
Okay, well, I'll give you a full screen there, Mike. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just true, right? I mean, let's face it. What is to the west, Todd? The freaking green swamp is to the west, right?
Exactly.
So, no business part. When you take a look at a major, and we can tie this into Wellness Way and maybe make a little chicken salad out of it. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at demand generators for a major commercial project, I guess in the scope of things, you wouldn't even call the Performing Arts Center a major commercial project, but it's a moderately significant project, right? You're looking at a spherical area, of demand generators, and when the west of you in your backyard, there is zero economic activity to the west of the Performing Arts Center. That is the green swamp, correct, Todd?
That's 100% correct.
Okay.
I'm done with it.
Well, let's.
Done with it.
I think we've probably hit a crescendo on that one. Let's get a little closer to home. Some things that may be being utilized a little more locally. What about the boathouse issue? I think, Mike, you were bringing something up there on that. Talk about
All
that.
right.
And
I want to hear Todd's perspective on the boathouse.
So we just renewed their lease, and that was a very tough subject. That boathouse, when it was designed for a second story to be in there, and so as we were having discussions, the rowing club that's there just wanted to have that. They've been only paying $500 a month for years and years and years. And it was $1 million to build it back when it was built. And, it's now a multi-million-dollar facility that they're getting for, I think we raised it to $1,000. And, I pushed for more. I wanted to be able to activate that second story and just really wanted to be able to somehow find more economic development dollars out of there, because we could put a restaurant or something on that second story. Great view. I mean, you're going to sit right on top of the water looking out over Lake Mineola, and we can actually charge them, some significant rents and start recouping some of that money. But the only way this stuff works is when you pull it off the tax rolls, and, then we're giving it away for peanuts. And I get that kids want to row, but every other rowing club in Central Florida operates out of a barn. Clermont's the only place that needs this massive building with this, multi-million-dollar piece of property on Lake Mineola. That piece of property would sell. I mean, Mike, you probably know better than I do. What's that property worth? $4 million?
Oh, it's worth some money, no doubt about it. But let's get into how was it pitched? Todd, do you remember that? Back in the day when that thing was on the table? I remember. So can we talk about how that was pitched to us? What was the vision for it then?
I can give you how it was pitched to me because I was on school board at the time. And so when they wanted our support, it was, well, there's a lot of scholarships for high schoolers if we have a rowing team. And I was kind of floored. I had never seen rowing teams and didn't know anything about it. And so there are some scholarships out there, but that was how it was sold to me personally back when they did it, was that this was going to be a huge deal. It was going to put a lot of people into college and help them go on full ride scholarships to all of these great schools. And so it sounded great, but then again, now that they have it, it was hard to take away. We had packed houses of people who were upset that we were trying to do what was right for the city. And I think it was 25% of the students in that program are actual city residents. Everybody else is not a city resident.
That's amazing. So let me, Chuck, if you don't mind, yeah. So I'm really having a good time with this. Just kind of reminiscing on the history of things like that. But everybody, anyway, I'm just going to start off with FX Sports, right? So you've got to give Allison Strange and her group credit, and you can get into the use of those softball fields and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, that is a major economic demand generator, right? And then we were pitched the same thing that we're going to have collegiate rowing at the boathouse, and that just never happened. Am I right, Todd?
It did not. And, there's, and I hate to get into well, I guess we're in the politics thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
So, unfortunately, Allison sort of got pushed out by some of the county political folks. And, all of a sudden they weren't doing reporting and it wasn't about economic development and they really didn't push it. And so Allison has been talking about rowing again, and because she still has she's got a passion for it and she still has a lot of connections. So she's pushing to make it happen in the city. I know she was having a conversation about it just on Tuesday during our workshop. So it'll be interesting to see if she can bring that economic development back. But unfortunately, when she was pushed out, it didn't have that driver anymore. They weren't making those reports. Matter of fact, when they came in and they tried to justify their existence, they actually used her reports from back when she was running it. So it's...
I tell you, you can give out, I'll be honest with you, I'm not always in agreement with Allison and FX Sports. When you start denying, like, for example, the softball fields, the argument on the county side is the softball fields were built for the residents, the citizens of Lake County or whatever, and FX Sports is tying up the fields, and the public doesn't get the use of those fields like they were originally intended to. And that's probably a fair argument. But at the end of the day, and I'm just going to say that, of all of the interlocal types of agreements that I've seen in Lake County, FX Sports is probably the most economically productive of all of them. Can you agree with that?
100%. There is no doubt that Allison Strange puts heads in beds. What they do from, and I didn't realize how impactful that softball was. It's a huge generator for heads in beds. And, her, with Dot Richardson being in our backyard, we've got a lot of people, again, Choice of Champions, we've got people who are huge supporters of it and really know the economics of how to make it work and how to make it a driver for the city. And I will be honest, I don't have that experience. I don't have that expertise. And so Allison is somebody who I absolutely listen to every time she brings this up, because she has such a great knowledge of how that works. And they're such a big generator. When you talk about tourist development tax, we know where more than half of the tourist development tax for all of the county comes out of Clermont. And Allison's a big part of that. So, I don't agree with everything and she doesn't agree with everything I have to say. But when it comes to that, I just shut my mouth and listen to her and say, yes, ma'am.
If you don't mind, Chuck, I'm going to have a comment or two here.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm with you, Todd. I don't always agree, with what Allison and FX Sports want. But I'm going to tell you something right now. People aspire to greatness. And if you want people to build their own businesses, because FX Sports is privately owned business, right, Todd?
It is.
It is, yeah. So, I'm not a big fan of public-private partnerships. On the other hand, like, for example, I just ran for the State House and I interviewed with all the special interest groups and stuff like that. And, I have a rub with them on public-private partnerships. But my point I'm not rigid about it, right? So my point would be, as it relates to the softball fields, which also, keep in mind, the subject is the boathouse, right? But if you want to elevate someone who can demonstrate success and teach people how to be successful, you've got to put Allison Strange on the top of the mountain. I mean, these people know what's going on. You know, they have the connections, they have the business acumen, they have the organizational skills. The softball tournaments are 6 months of collegiate softball teams coming and going, right? I'm telling you that if the boathouse was as productive as the softball fields, then I would be all for it. But it isn't.
There you go.
And then you tie it back to the Performing Arts Center, and it isn't.
Okay.
And I'll leave it with that.
So let's move along. We have actually just a few more minutes and a couple of more topics. So we're gonna have to have you over for a third time here, Todd. Can we hold you over one more time for our? Okay.
Third and final.
There's a lot going on down in South Lake.
You're doing this, but I'm saying this. So let's finish up with lakefront development, and I know there's some issues with fixing some piers and other issues there. So we'll finish up with lakefront development. Todd, why don't you take it away?
So in the waterfront development, we've got something called Meet Us in the Middle that has been in the works for quite some time, and I have kind of stood in the way of pieces and parts of it because I'm not super happy with it. At the time it was approved, it was about a $15 million investment, and I just think we can spend $15 million in places that have much more economic impact to our communities and much more impact to our residents. You know, I just don't think that area, I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think it deserves it from a financial standpoint. So we had a meeting on it Tuesday, and it turns out that I think we're going to be in a pretty good spot. We're going to replace some of our piers, not all of them, because we lost 6 piers in the hurricane. And so there were 4 that I think we're going to replace. 2 of them, we just, hey, we're not going to do it. We're not going to spend the money on them, which I think is the right move. And we're going to move forward with pieces and parts of the Meet Us in the Middle. But we scaled it back significantly. And that's a big part is, people love to come in with these grand schemes because it's other people's money. But when you stand back and you look at it and say, you know what, it's not other people's money, it's my money. I paid taxes just like everybody else, and we need to be as frugal as we can be. And sometimes it does take a little bit of government investment to get that economic driver moving along, sort of that seed money. But once that's done, then we should stand back and we should reap rewards from it that are exponential. And we're just not necessarily doing that. So, but I think that we're going to see those piers get rebuilt fairly quickly. And, I've challenged everybody to come up with something great for Meet Us in the Middle. I want to see something that's interactive, that's art, that somebody wants to come see, that's so unique that you've never heard of. And we need that in Clermont.
Sure.
So down my way, there's a major highway coming in. We're just about at the end of our time, but there's a major highway coming in, I guess, just south of Lake Louisa, the state park there. That's going to be an eastern, area to bring people in from the east. That seems like it could be a beneficial thing. It's outside the city, though. That's a county.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might be outside of the city for now, but
for now. Well, the interesting part
that'll be a very good. Since you're going to hold me over, that'll be a good.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. We'll shut it right down.
I think you'll find more people traveling east and west on that road.
We'll shut it down right now. And Mike, do you have any final comments?
I thought I did a minute ago, but you just wiped my slate. You know what I mean? But you just got me going on that piece of it. So I guess we can just. reinvigorate on
okay,
the next
okay.
on the next module.
So
anyway,
sounds good.
I'm having a lot of fun here today, gentlemen. I really enjoyed having time with us.
Yeah, well,
And we really
again,
get into some cool stuff.
Okay, well, thank you, Todd, and thanks again to all for tuning in to our twice weekly live stream. Tune in next Tuesday at 11 for more from Clermont City Councilman Tod Howard. See you next time, and meanwhile, God bless you, God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.